Hey, it's Matt with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Monday. It's September 19th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and you can see on the daily chart here that we're bouncing off the midline again. I'll zoom in here just so you can see the big picture. You can see this downtrend we've been working, and if we zoom in here to this most recent channel, we can see we bounced off the oversold down here. So I'm not sure how much correction we're going to do. I still think we got a ways to go to the downside. So doesn't mean we're not going to see some more correction in here in the meantime. So um, this even though this looks like a strong reversal day on this chart, the daily chart here, if you look at the intraday chart, it was mostly a range day that broke higher late and closed high. So we're probably overdue for a bounce here back to the midline, which would be this purple uh, at a minimum. And we could touch the trend line and make another leg down here. We'll just have to see. It's kind of hard to know what we're going to do from here, but we are bouncing off this midline, so we could trade all the way back up to the main trend line again here. You back out. So we didn't quite even get back to the trend line last time, which really led to this big sell-off. So, but as you can see, this yellow channel looks like it's played out, but we could be folding over into a flatter channel that's a little steep maybe. So we'll see what happens. But a little bounce here, correction of some kind is not out of the. I mean, even a correction all the way back to the upper trend line is not out of the question. So even if we're going to go lower, so we'll just have to kind of see what tomorrow brings. But I don't think the selling's over yet, so don't get too comfortable with the buying just yet. But anyway, let's flip over to the 2,000 tick intraday chart. We'll look at what it looks like over there and go through the trades, and we'll wrap the day up. But let's flip. Okay, here's a look at it, and you can see I kind of gave this the range kind of a lime color, and you can see that I mean, we really trended up from the overnight lows or early morning lows, maybe 5 o'clock this morning. We trended up, found resistance here, trended back down to the midline, bounced around in there, and then finally, right around 2 o'clock, we kind of rallied into the close there. And we did finally push outside the range, and we closed outside the range. So, but you can see most of the trading day until this last rally here, we were trading inside this range, and you pretty much needed to trade the shorter term trends and channels within the range. So, there's a look at it. Let's zoom in here and go through the trades. Okay, 7 o'clock came just as notice we got this channel working up and we got a close outside and we're just kind of chopping sideways here. It drops lower, comes back and turns down pretty quickly. So we had a failed second entry long there. There was no reason to really think range just yet. So I like going short there. It's good for a quick scalp, but you didn't get much else out of it. And then it's bouncing, and then you get a second entry long here. And we didn't make a new high here, so there's a good chance we could go higher right there. So I like that one, just flip-flopping back. It's hard to flip-flop back and forth once you're short and then long. So if you didn't see this, it is a little bit of, it looks like we're kind of working sideways, but there's definitely going to be a short trap there, and you can see how quickly that ran up before it pulled back. That's a sure sign that you had some people trapped. And then they actually took it a little higher before it trades back down again. Unfortunately, when it comes back, let me make this a little bigger. Unfortunately, when it comes back here, you just don't get a setup to go long. You get a higher low here, but there's actually a shorter term trend going on here too. But it's just a high or low. It's not a failure or anything like that. It's the first entry. It's it looks a little congested there. I don't think I'd take that. We run on up, and then we're just working sideways again. And once again, I don't see anything worth trading within this range, and it breaks out and goes higher. Again, there's a higher low here. Problem is that's you're going long. If you back out here, there's resistance across there, and you're going long at the high of a move away from the EMA, so that's never a good idea. Even though it would have worked, you don't want to take that trade. Most of the time, if you take that trade, you're probably going to get trapped. And we just continue to kind of chop up here, and finally we come back 2 legs back to the EMA. You don't really have your trend line set yet, so it's just a second entry long. You probably could argue that there's a triple test across there as well. I didn't draw it, but you can see that. But it's a second entry long regardless, right at the EMA. Nice signal bar. I like going long there. A few minutes later, you actually get a higher low. It breaks lower and turns up, and that confirms that. I mean, you pretty much can tell that trend line's valid now. We're just walking up it. I don't know that I'd wait and go long up here, but when this broke and went past this bar right here is an engulfing bar, maybe you take that trade. And the fact that it confirmed that trend line, if you could get a little better entry here and make sure you had room for 4 ticks, maybe you still take that on a break above this bar, but I just think it's we moved a little far for that. Same thing here, it's just a higher low, and then suddenly we reverse and we're going the other way. Notice you got a first entry and then a second entry here. I didn't mark this because there's a strong possibility that we're going to retest this high, and you do get a higher low here, or I'm sorry, not a higher low, but you get a second entry long coming off this high. But notice how we couldn't get back up to the trend line on either one of these. You've definitely clearly got a trend line working down, so I don't know if you want to go long right into a trend line, right into the EMA, and you can see there might be enough room there for it to work. I don't know if it is or not. It's just, yeah, there's just enough room for it to work. But I wouldn't take that above this midline if you see this possible other channel. And it's pretty obvious it's correct because you can see the midline working properly there. And so I just don't know that well, where'd it go? Lost my spot here. Okay, sorry. Here it is right here. There's a second entry long right there. It's a nice signal bar, and it's clearly a second entry. But we're below the EMA, and you see it quickly fails. Again, I don't think I go short there either, even though that's going to be a failure. There's a good chance we're going to the other side, but I generally want to see it come through the EMA and then come back and test it like here before I'm going to go short, if I'm going to go short on it. Because there's just I mean, if you took that one, and the other reason I don't like that one is you can see you've got the doji there, another doji. It's a little risky. It would have worked, but you don't know that ahead of time. Then we drop down here. You actually get a break, and you tried to make a new low. You tried to go lower 2 more times, and really you easily got a triple test across here. So I kind of like this trade here. Just the key is just make sure you got enough room to get out before that EMA. So you might have to let it break higher and drop a limit order or a tick or 2 back. With that being a triple test, you might just put a buy stop there, but I'd be a little more conservative and try to get a little better entry, which I think you could have got a tick or 2 there and would have given you room. But on that triple test after we've already broken out, we're probably going to at least go back and test that high, which you can see it looked like it was going to turn down there after testing that high, but it ends up pushing higher. Runs on up. Comes back, we're just kind of chopping around, looking for a new low. We come back to the trend line here. We bounce, and you actually, well, it's supposed to be a green up arrow. Notice that you're working up. This breaks lower and turns up and goes out the other side. I don't know that I'd wait. Actually, you could. It doesn't break above this, and then you get an inside bar, so you can't go long up here. You could only trade this in an engulfing bar. And that did confirm the trend line, so I like it to some degree as a higher low, but it looks a little congested there too. But look what happens. It breaks out and fails, then turns back down and traps people before it turns back up. So, and you can tell they were trapped by how big that bar is and how strong it works up. So maybe you take that trade. It's a little aggressive. You can see the trend working up. You get a close outside, move to a new high. That's a second entry long, but look how it's obviously congestion, lots of resistance there, and you see it doesn't go far, and it turns back down. It fails out the bottom before it takes off. And I don't really see this, just rockets up, no setup, then you're sideways again. I didn't draw it, but there's congestion right there. And it's probably really more like that right there. You do get a little pull back there, but that's right into the highs of the overnight, which is just too dangerous to go long into because it's probably going to fail, which you can see it does quickly fail here. And there is a failure set up, but it's above the resistance, acting somewhat as support. It's right into the EMA. It's right into the midline. There's just too many reasons that you can't go short right there. You do get a first entry short here, but so this would be your signal bar, and that's just a first entry. There, you might look at this. It looks like a failure, but it's so close to these lows, and it's truly not, because it's really a first entry, second entry, third entry, fourth entry, and this makes a new high. So you can't really call that a failure anyway. But finally, you bounce off the trend line. You do get a close outside a new low, and this does break lower and turn up. Maybe you try. I didn't mark that one, but you could argue for that. I don't think I go long here, but if you like that as the engulfing bar, thinking this is bouncing off the trend line, maybe you go long when this, after this breaks lower and turns up, maybe you go long right there. If you wait just a minute, you get a higher low here. If it breaks above there, you're going to probably get another leg and hopefully a new trend up. And this does give you room to get out before you get back to the resistance again. I mean, you got to worry about that resistance. We don't know at this point. You don't really know if the range is going to win out or the trend's going to win out. So far, the trend's still in play, and we've already gotten through the top of the range once, so the range may lose out. Notice how you come up here and it fails on a breakout again, and you're chopping sideways. It does get a little failed break lower out of this little congestion, and again, you got plenty of room to get out before it gets back to the midline or the resistance up here. So maybe you take that one. It's a little aggressive because of the sideways, but generally you want a higher low or something. But no problem with that one if you took it. It's again, it's aggressive, and then suddenly break higher. That one fails real quickly and turns down, but it breaks higher and runs up here and makes a double top and then turns down. That one's really tempting, but don't chase these highs and try to pick these tops because you'll just get burned. And if you just wait a minute, it tries to go higher once, twice. That's a failure. It doesn't quite get back to the EMA, but that's such a strong move that that's probably close enough. And it does break higher first and turn down. Again, I don't know that I go short right there at that double bottom low. But when this broke higher and turned down and went past, I probably wouldn't have a problem going short on the engulfing bar. I did mark it green though. It's a little bit aggressive, but you could treat it like a failure, and on a failure it doesn't matter what the signal bar looks like. But when it made that double bottom, I don't know that I'd have gone short there. It actually turns down, turns back up again, and then turns down, but just I think you got to skip all that. You finally get a little close outside, move to a new low, and then you got a little weak trend working up. Again, I don't see any opportunity to enter this, and then suddenly notice you get your first close outside. It doesn't quite make a new high, so I don't think you want to go short yet. And it comes back right here, but I don't think I want to The trap never really triggers either. There's a second entry long. It would have worked after you rode this little sideways stuff, but you probably don't want to trade that second entry. If you took it, because it was really before the next bar came up. If you took it, it's not the end of the world, and it does work. But you could have easily got stopped out on that. Um, First entry short, and then there's a lower high here, but again, um, I don't think you want to wait on the bar to close, and on the engulfing bar you got to take it in going short right into the midline, so that's not very good. Um, and of course it drops way down here. Now you got the break of the yellow and a move to a new low, and you get a second entry long with a pretty good signal bar, way away from the EMA. Plus you push through this midline, and you'll generally at least come back and test that even if you're going lower. And you can see it comes back and it doesn't hold, and we get back above it again. But yeah, maybe you take that second entry. Again, it's a little aggressive. And then we're just chopping sideways once again. I don't see anything here that I like to go short, and there's certainly nothing to go long. Maybe you look at this as a triple test across here that holds off that midline again. I still think you need a higher low or something. Let me just draw this on here. Just so you can see what I'm going to explain here. Maybe you trade that as a breakout. I'll make it green. There's a higher low here, but you can't go long right into that resistance that I just moved out of the way by accident. It's just an inside bar as well. It turns out to be a nice move up, but if you wait a second, you get a second entry and you get a chance for a scalp there. And it just continues to work a little higher there. But that's a second entry long. And it's an engulfing bar. It broke lower and turned up. Maybe you go long on the engulfing bar. Here you're pressing. You don't have much room, but I still think there's enough room to scalp out there. It doesn't end up mattering because even though it backs up, it goes higher still. But right here, if you go long above this bar, you want to make sure you got room to scalp out. And then of course we've made the new high. Now we're working lower. You got a failure here. I marked that one green. It's not a great setup, but it is a failure. If it breaks lower, it's probably going to drop on down. You just make sure you got enough room to get out here. Maybe you have to use let that break lower and use a limit order. Get a little creative with it, maybe. It's not a great setup, so I just marked it green. And of course, you do get a close outside on this green, this cyan color, and it drops on down. Then we're bouncing and going higher again. I don't see any chance to get long, and it turns back down. I draw my trend line there just in case. And of course, it does come back here and give you confirmation. And that is a second entry short, but that is such a neutral type bar that I didn't mark it. And you can clearly see here we're swinging back and forth above and below the EMA here. So you can trade this kind of like a range, and maybe you could say it's a triple test too, so maybe you take that trade. And I didn't mark the lower high here, which you could have taken as well. It's moved a little far to be a lower high, so it's really just a first entry, but there's a lot of support across there too, and so I'm not crazy about it. I just didn't mark that trade. I think it's a little risky. You might say, hey, there's a failure here, but again, look at all that support, and notice how it fails again before it finally starts to push lower. But it comes back to the trend line again, and you get a first entry short, then it breaks higher right there and turns down, and so that's a second entry short when it goes by that bar right there. You could enter it on the engulfing bar. I'd probably wait for this to close, and if it breaks lower, go with it. We bounce before we get to the other side this time. There's a higher low here, but by this time, this is starting to, it's pretty obvious we're in a downtrend, and this is starting to point down. And even though you're still getting some pushes above it, look, it's not swinging back and forth. So sideways with the way it's starting to turn down here. So you need to be thinking short. And so I like that one. Comes back. Of course, you can't go short there, and then it breaks out. That's close to being a lower high. It does close above the EMA though. So I think you want to wait and see if you get a reversal here, and you don't really get one, and then it's going the other way. And it's too early to go long here unless you get some kind of really good setup. Maybe you say there's a trap right there, but it doesn't get back to the EMA. Maybe you say, okay, there's a trend line, but look, it's right into a double top there. It takes on off, but you just can't risk that. Chop sideways. Again, it ends up going higher, but no setup there. And we're chopping sideways again. And here you do at least get a triple test off the high of this little range. I don't think I'd go short here. When it breaks higher and turns down, it's probably going to trap some people. But the problem is, too, it's going sideways. So, but it's a triple test. Notice 1, 2, 3. It's really bearish by the time it closes, but I just don't think you can wait till it closes. I think you have to take it on the engulfing bar, and I think that's a little risky trying to pick a top because this could actually break lower and then end up closing higher. So you got to know for sure it's a triple test with a bearish bar before you can really take it, and that's the problem there. And we do bounce, but again, I don't see anything there worth taking that late in the day. And I mean, it's just really your last really decent trade was maybe just around 130, a little bit before 130 today. And we were still trading a range at that point. So, yeah, we were overdue for a little correction. The market's severely oversold once again. It doesn't take but a bar or two, and we're oversold. It takes 4 or 5 bars to rally, and then 1 bar is a huge sell-off. And it's been, when we do get those sell-offs, they're pretty ugly. So, but anyway, that's how I saw it today, and we're at 22 minutes here, so I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. See what tomorrow brings. It'd be nice to get a nice trend day again. See if we'll get one either upside or downside. Whichever way it comes, we'll take it. But yeah, I hate these days when you get these days that it just shoots up and goes sideways and then shoots up, and it doesn't really give you many setups to get in it. It makes it a little more difficult. So, but there's still plenty of trade. All you need is 2 or 3 trades a day max, and there's still plenty of that here. And there's probably a couple more you might argue are green that I just skip past them. But the idea is to take 2 or 3 of the best trades each day, and to do that you got to be patient, and you got to pass up some iffy trades, and you got to play by the rules and wait on the setups as we teach them. So if you can do that, you're going to have much more success than when you're trying to find a trade on every swing here. And that's what most new traders do. They're looking for an entry on every swing. When we know that we're looking for entries off this key entry points, which are the trend lines, and when we're going sideways, the support and resistance of the range. That's what we're looking for. That's where the magic happens. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.